All right, good people. Hi there, Vernita here. And I know it's been a minute. So I am going to talk to you about how to avoid the summer slide in your life, career, or business. Now, you may be watching this outside of summer. So we will talk about like insert seasonal slide instead of summer slide. So a little background on where that came from. So if you're new to me, hi, I'm Vernita, the Brilliant Solutionist, and I'll go into details about who I help and all of that in a little bit, or you can just watch the trailer video. All right. So, where did Summer Slide come from? So, my background is in education, and from K-12, and I'll say even in higher education, this is my range of experiences. More so in K-12. And you may have experienced this too if you were a student. Kids go to school pretty much between August or September to December. There's a winter break, and then from January to May, June-ish, right? But those months of June, July, and for the most part of August, they're out for the summer. Yes, there's summer school, but a lot of summer school, from what I remember, because it's been a minute since I've been in K-12, but it's only a few weeks. It's not the entire summer. Now, way back in the day when I did summer school, it was a real summer school. Like for the most of the summer, you were showing up all day, just like regular school, but they kind of cut back. No, they have cut back. But a lot of kids did not go to summer school. Now, you do have some kids going to summer camps, but they're probably more activity based, right? But during that summer is when all the kids are like, school's out, I don't have to learn anything, I don't have to do anything, there's no enrichment, there's no learning. They're having a good time traveling or at camps, like I said, at home, probably doing nothing, whatever the case may be, right? But then when they come back to school in August or September, starting a new year, it's like they forgot everything. And it's like you're reteaching things that they should have retained. And you can go back and to say, well, you didn't learn it in the first place. But even some of my top students who I know retained, did well, all of those things, when they come back, it's kind of like, what is that again? What's my name again? What class is this again? And that is what we call summer slide. Now, there is really deep research on this. I won't bore you with those numbers, but it's because their mind is stopped. It's like the moment if you stop doing something consistently, you go into atrophy, right? So it's kind of like a academic atrophy type of thing. Nothing to where you can't kickstart it back up. So it's not like the brain is dead or anything, but there are just some things that leaked out because they're not in that constant motion. Now, the students who were going to academic camps and things like that, they did not encounter the summer slide, and you can see why. All right, so you're probably saying, well, Vernita, what does that have to do with what you're talking with me as an adult? I believe, and I experienced this myself, so bear with me on going through all the details, looking down at my notes because this is fresh off the press. I have experienced a sort of summer slide. And technically, mine has been in the summer, but this could work for you if you are in a seasonal slide where things were going kind of okay, or things may have been going great. There's a period of time where things just seem like they shut down, have not worked, and you really suffered a blow. And so I've experienced that. And instead of me wallowing, I was like, what lessons can I learn to share with other people who may not understand what is happening to them or get outside of that? So it's similar to what we did as educators. And then when I worked with administrators, and then even during some coaching times where it wasn't in the summer, but there were some clients who were experiencing a seasonal slide, and how did we get them to the other side? But I am telling you some things that are fresh off that I have not done this yet with clients in this way. So I believe I am my own case study. A lot of us are our own case studies, and my background in research, all of the credentials behind my name, that has also helped me to lay this out for you. All right, so the first thing I had to do, this is going to be a 4-part learning session. All right, so I'm trying to keep these short, but I really want you to understand kind of if you relate to this, and then what to do on the other side of that. A lot of times I don't like to talk about things until I'm way on the other side. But for this particular summer slide, seasonal slide, I thought it would be beneficial for you to hear some steps along the way. So you'll know that this is like kind of real time and it's, it's not fully on the other side, but I can see the tunnel. I think that's a better way of putting it. Some information to help you actually start seeing the light, even if it's not clear, just a little glimmer. And then that will give you the momentum to keep moving forward until you can actually see the light and then get out of the tunnel. Because I think a lot of us be seeing the light and then we still don't come out the tunnel. I want you out the tunnel. So what are the first thing I had to do? So this is a four-part session. We're going to talk about redreaming, realigning, reinventing, and realize. If you look at the tagline on my YouTube channel, you will see the banner. Well, at the time of this recording, you will see the banner, right? So I'm going to really break that down. I said this was fresh, hot off the press. I literally sat here this morning. It's like, okay, because I had another idea, and I was like, no, let's talk about this one. And so I was like, well, what framework? Because I like frameworks and and steps, right? So these are not like steps for you to say, okay, now I have to do that. Think of these as like buckets. Sometimes the first step may take longer than the second step, or don't put them in like sequential order. I have them in sequential order because this is work for my brain, but I want to give you them in a way to where you can probably remix it for yourself. But I think all of these things I'm going to talk about, they have to go into the bucket, but you can choose which order you put them in the bucket that best fits for you. And I think that's the most powerful thing when you're looking at coaching or consulting or advice. You have to look at it from your lens and your perspective of what works for you. So I believe most things out there work, but you have to figure out how they work for you. And that's what I'm going to talk about. So the overarching thing for this lesson today, or this part, is redream. And then there are three sub steps or sub lessons that I learned from that. So the first lesson was I had to refocus. Yes, I write my F's backwards. I had to refocus. And what does that mean to refocus? Well, I had to be honest with myself about what I really wanted in this neural journey or this business journey. I believe that there is a difference between being an entrepreneur and being a business owner. I talked about that in a few other videos, but I'm not going to get on the soapbox, but so many people are thinking that they have to be entrepreneurs, meaning that, oh, I need to go become a coach. And that is not the case. Please do not think that you have to be a coach and that makes you an entrepreneur or starting a business. Being an entrepreneur can be so many different things. Now, I lean towards more coaching and consulting and advice because that's just what I've been gifted with. That's been part of my career journey. And I even had to step back. And that's why I said the part about being honest, like, okay, do I really need to walk away from this whole teaching and consulting, whatever it is? Just because that was my career and my profession, does that mean it needs to be my business? And I know I started helping people with that, and I do talk about learn how to leverage and lead with your expertise and your experiences, but that doesn't always mean you have to become a coach or a consultant. There's so many other things to do with that. So I had to take a step back and say, no, forget coaching. I don't want to coach people in that way. Then I realized, like, remember, there's a difference between coaching and consulting and being a strategist. So I had to be honest about what I really wanted to do. So I had to be honest and then refocus. When I realized, okay, when I was honest and say, this is what I actually want to do, now I had to refocus on all of those things. And what I mean by that, and why I'm talking about that in the context of redreaming, when you redream, it is that dream. Now, we're not talking about goals here. And probably later on in the series, I'll talk about goals. But before you start looking at your goals, and probably the reason why you're not hitting your goals, and I can say this for myself in certain areas, is because they did not align to the dream. And that's a big one. So the dream, I'm talking about the hidden dream, the dream that you keeps you up at night, Well, for me, I go to sleep, but in the daytime, like if you daydream and it keeps you not, I don't want to say not focused, but if you find yourself drifting off to the possibilities of what could be, that aching desire that's in your gut, every time you watch something on TV and you automatically connect it to a longing or a desire that you want, or it would be cool if I could, or I would really love to do X, Y, and Z. And then every time you look around, you're driving somewhere, you hear a conversation, you watch a movie, there goes X, Y, and Z popping up. That's that dream. You may not know how you're going to do it. You may not even know why that is floating around in your mind. Well, God gave it to you. That's why. But aside from that, you're like, where's this coming from? That's the dream I'm talking about. So you have to be honest about going after that particular dream, not because it's, like I said, now mine just so happens to align with my career, but I believe that God chose that before my career and my profession. So for a lot of people, it may be a complete shift from what you're doing, or it may be something, an extended version of what you're doing, but you have to be honest about that. Let's say if I wanted to go in real estate, but I've been in education all my life, but I have this longing desire to, you know, have properties or commercial buildings or construct or anything like that. Nowhere near I went to school with. I didn't, like maybe you play with little houses when you're growing up or something like that, but there is nothing in your proximity or your, I guess I want to say proximity. There's nothing in your space that says go be like a real estate mogul. But in your mind and what you're dreaming about, what you're drawn to, what you're watching on like YouTube or types of movies or documentaries or what you're reading, they all tie into that. Some of the people that you find yourself listening to, they're all like these big time real estate moguls. And you're like, why am I drawn to them? That could be a clue for you to, and you know it. And that's the thing, like you don't need a coach, a guru, or expert, or anybody to tell you, hey, this is what I think you should be doing. That's you. You pick that, right? So I'm saying all that to say it could be something as drastic like that, but you have to lean into it and then be honest. When you're honest about what you want to, like your dream, because you're like saying, well, maybe I want to have all of these apartment complexes or these residential houses so that I can help, families get their first homes or whatever the case may be, whatever your dream is, because it's not like it's a dream. Okay, you get it. So when you have that, now you have to refocus because it never went away. You probably had the thought 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and then you've been trying different things, but that tug is still there. You have to be honest and refocus. Now that you refocus, you sit with that and then you start like playing it over in your mind and owning it. Before you start doing anything tangible, you have to own it in your mind first, right? You have to be like, okay, I surrender and this is what I am going to do. And then you have to expect for that dream to work out, even when you don't know all of the details. That was something scary for me. And I realized that was something that I was holding on to. Not that I couldn't coach, consult, or give advice or build that type of company. Because in one of my videos, I told you I want to build a multi-million-dollar water company, wisdom advice training for exceptional results. Shout out to Bishop 𝐊𝐨𝐿𝐼 for that water acronym. So I said I want to do that. That wasn't the problem. It was how big did I want to go and what was the end result of what did I see that look like? What was the overall dream and how in the world is that possible? Can I coach a few people here and there, get some consulting? I can and I have. But the scale, the magnitude of that is what freaked me out. And I was like, I don't know how that can happen. And you're like, well, aren't you this person who talks about that? Yes, but I want to be transparent with you. But every time you go to another level, it gets a little shaky and a little scary. And if it doesn't, that means it's not big enough. So you'll hear me say this throughout. The big dream is to bankrupt 1 billion burial plots. You'll hear more about that later, but it's like, how in the world am I going to do that? Why is that even here? Right? What now? That came later. The bankrupt 1 billion burial plots. I didn't have that actual phrase until like a few months ago But I used to say, bankrupt the graveyard. I talked about it in my book, embracing grit for greatness. It was always that that gnawing feeling of what can we do before people die? Live a life, pour it out. How to make sure that you spend every bit of your potential, like is your potential realized while you're on this planet, right? So that was always lingering, but I kind of like got into this. "Mm, not really going for it because it was like, how is that going to happen? And that was a mistake. So before you get to the how, you get to the what it is, and then you have to expect it to work out. So you want to be a real estate mogul with $1 billion portfolio? You're like, I don't know how, but I'm expecting that to work out because one, if God gave you the desire of your heart, it is what he desired for you to do. He wanted this thing to happen in the world. He created you to be born at such a time as this. I know it sounds cliche. So he was like, you know what? That's the person I want to do that. And so while you're like, where's this coming from? He gave it to you. So now it is your job to own it and expect it. Well, God gave it to me. He knows good and well I don't have the resources to do it or the connections or any of that. But the only thing I can do at this moment is to expect for it to work out because he gave it to me. So you have to be honest about what you want and then refocus, right? I think a lot of us know, we do know, we search and search, but we keep searching because we're afraid to be honest with ourselves, and then we're afraid to focus on that thing because of our limited expectations. And so you have to make sure that when you're in this whole journey of up leveling your life, you'll hear me talk about entrepreneurship, business ownership, and then even becoming a thought leader in your own right, being this person to take a stand in whatever industry you're in. You have to understand that all of this up leveling and things that you're doing is faith movement. And there are people who are not believers who have more faith than people who are believers. And I slipped into that category of my logical mind trying to take over. And it was like, you can't get up and read your Bible and have this time with God every single day, multiple times a day at times, and you're still not going after the big dream. Uh, Something is off. There's a disconnect there. So it's faith. And I don't want to say, so listen careful. I don't want to say you don't have to believe in God. I mean, you technically don't. There are people who are atheists and Satan worshipers and all that having success, but guess what? They believe in what they're doing. They have faith in what they're doing. So take out faith for a moment of Christianity, because faith is not just like Christianity. It's like it's a belief. Like I believe that this is going to happen. I expect it to happen, right? So for a lot of us, especially if you're a believer, you have to get like this practical faith. And I know that sounds like is it oxymoron? I know it sounds weird. How can I have practical faith when faith is technically illogical? What I mean by practical faith is not so much, oh God, I pray that you make this thing, this dream that you give me, you make it happen now. And I just sit there and let it happen. But then I go worry, like, okay, how and what do I need? Oh God, this failed. All of that. And it's like, no, God, you gave it to me. I'm going to have faith, and then I'm going to take the actions and towards what you've given me. I'm going to have the behaviors towards what I believe to be true or what's going to happen, and I'm going to have the habits. So those are the things that we're doing to make sure we have practical faith. So that was the first lesson, is to refocus. Oh, let me also tell you about redreaming, and I'm going to read what I wrote here because it's still kind of fresh. So I said I want to bankrupt 1 billion barrier plots, and this is going to go into lesson 2. And then I said, how am I, like, why do I want to do that? How am I going to do that? And I said, by helping high income professionals get an ROI, or return on investment, on their experiences and their expertise, so they can create their own ecosystems and build their own economy. Sounds very wordy. It took me forever to get that like that. And you see, I'm still like reading it, but those were just the words. But the overall dream of what I wanted to do was still there. And where that all came from was because I wanted everyone to experience professor life. Now, some of my old videos you can go watch, where at first I was like, I love being a college professor, but just not where I was, right? And then a lot of things on my old videos where I talked about becoming professor ready, or I talked a lot about education, but and how to transfer those skills over. And at one time, I was in this coaching program and I was working with a mindset coach, and I was like, I want to be America's professor, and I want to help change the face. What I said, change the transform the face of education or something like that. It's also my old videos. So while my messaging was still off, I still believe that there are people who had certain knowledge and skill sets that could be used in other industries or arenas to help other people live out their best life. And so as a college professor, I didn't work every day, which was great, but I was able to teach. I was writing. I developed my own curriculum. I traveled. I, did research. I did all of these great things, and I had the time and the freedom to do that. And I was like, wow, this is great for someone who never wanted to be a college professor. Once I became one, I was like, this is like the best kept secret. So then I was like, well, everybody should do this, not necessarily that you have to go into the university arena, which I was like, everybody should experience this right here. Maybe not tenure track. That's a different story. But the ability to be able to have that freedom and flexibility, creating things out of your mind. Yeah, there are some things you had to do, but being able to teach impressionable minds or teach people something that and then help them because they all have the common goal of graduating. You can lay out plans for them and teach them things to help them reach their goals along the way. So in a way, it was like coaching. Sometimes it was consulting. You had to be a strategist, then you had to be a thought leader because you had to go to these conferences and write these papers and write these books. And it was just fascinating, right? And that solidified when I met somebody in Singapore. I won't go into details about that. That's somewhere on the channel. But that was the big dream I had. But somewhere down the line, I was like, oh, well, maybe that's not good enough. Everyone's already out here like coaching in the coaching industry, and I don't know anything about that. So let me go learn just a bunch of foolishness in my mind, right? And that kind of steered me off this path. And I had to get back, and I was like, you know what? God has literally been training me to be this type of person. I'll say I could technically say all my life, but I think in my mind where I can pinpoint it was between the ages of 13 and 15, where I really started teaching other people, helping people get results, laying out plans for them, and pep talking them, right? And I can follow that path, but somewhere one is the enemy. He be blocking you. He can't stop us from getting what we want, but he can sure block us, right? So, and then like just a lot. And during this summer slide or the seasonal slide, I had to say, wait, you've been trucking along at this for a few years. Yeah, you have some success, but not at that level. Why? One, I had to overall redream. And inside of redreaming, I had to refocus. The second thing I had to do, and some people may not like this, but you have to do it. I had to revisit. So the first time I had to refocus, the second lesson I learned was to revisit. Uh-oh. What did I have to revisit? I had to revisit some of the self-education that I had invested in. I know a lot of times people say, well, coaching doesn't work or it's a scam, those classes. And first of all, if you're taking classes or courses from people, that's not coaching. That's not coaching. That's more of it is self-study, but look at it more as consulting. They've laid out something for you to do and for you to follow. Coaching is what happens in between with why can I go from point A to point B? What is stopping me? I literally can see what I need to do to go from point A to point B, but there's something I literally cannot do it or I have not done it. What's blocking me from me to move forward? Coaching comes in between those gaps of why you're not moving forward. Sometimes it is a strategy that you need to like, well, maybe you need to do it this way. I'm telling you, this is how you go from point A to point B or point A to point C. So you're like, okay, I'm trying to go, but the way that you're telling me or the way it's not working for me in this way, and that's where the strategist comes in. Well, go this way, go that way. Now, if the strategist come in and say, okay, I need you to shift here, turn here, because you still get here. It may not be a straight line for you. You may need to zigzag. But then the coach still comes and say, well, this is why you need to zigzag, but I'm going to help you along the way, especially if in your mind, your mindset, not like mental, but your mindset, right? Anyway, and so if you're taking a course and you're like, oh, the course don't work, it's a scam. No, it was a course. All right. So revisit the course for the concepts. I had to revisit them for the concepts that I may have missed with the redream and the refocus in my mind and with the people who I wanted to serve. So when I initially took a few the when I was now some of them were coaching programs where you get on the calls, but again, I think those were still more like consulting. Looking back on it, I think I've only had like maybe 1.5 true coaches. But, anyway, but just manage your expectations when you're getting in these programs, right? Knowing that they're not coaching programs, they're consulting or strategy based. All right. So I had to revisit those. One, I had to coach myself, right? And then two, I had to go back and remember what were some of my coaches, the ones who were actual coaches. What were they doing? What was I doing? What were those exercises that I can do myself? And I believe even though I do coach people at a high level, I still want to grow that. I believe that you are your first coach. I am gonna stick with that. I even have a complimentary resource called Master Coach You. You can get it in the description of certain things that you do. So you can listen to people and they can give you some tips or just them talking can trigger something in your mind. And you go back and you sit with that and you think through those things instead of just listening for listening's sake, actively listening, you can coach yourself out of certain situations. And then I believe when you get to a certain level, then you get yourself to a certain level. Then when you start working with another coach or strategist consultant, then you skyrocket. A lot of people try to skyrocket and they're still anchored down. And uh, real coaches and consultants don't have time to be like pulling you out. You might, okay, but I digress. All right. So I had to revisit. And when I revisit some of those courses that I took or some of those exercises with with the refocus, I was like, oh, okay, now I can get back on track. So this may be happening to you. You probably got off track somewhere. Go back to some of the things that you invested in, right? Go back to those things. I'm not saying that everything works, because some stuff is trash, but go back with a different perspective. Just like if you were in college or you took, some certification courses, and I'm not talking coaching certification, I'm talking about maybe for your job or whatever. And you're like, oh man, this person was boring, or why did I have to take that class, that professor, this and that. But there was something in that class that got you to the next level. Whether you liked it or not, there was still that thing in there. So I'm inviting you to go back and revisit some of the courses you invested in. There was a reason why you invested. Now go back with a different perspective. So when I did that, I let go of some things and I was like, okay, with this fresh dream, I redream my true dream in my mind and this sense of refocus, I went back and I saw some things. I'm like, oh, now this can make sense. Now I can apply it. Now I can see why it may not have worked because that wasn't for me. The approach I was taking was that was somebody else's approach. That wasn't for me. So even if you work with me, I may say, here are some steps to do, but you still have to be in a place tuned into your star player to say, okay, you may have showed me steps 1, 2, and 3, but the way my brain works, I need to do 3, then 1, and then back to 2. You're still going to get everything done, but it's how you're doing it, right? And that works for you. Now, the other part to that is when I did that, now I saw some things where, oh, I didn't know how to do that at all. So I had to invest in something new. Don't be afraid to do that. You have to let go of, well, I tried it before, it didn't work. The last time I had a coach or the last time I bought a course, it didn't work for me. So what? There are a lot. If you went to college and you have above a bachelor's degree, well, even at a bachelor's degree, there are a lot of classes that had nothing to do with what you're doing now, but they were all part of a puzzle piece to get you to the end goal. So you're when you've gone back and you say, okay, either I learned something new, I see why this didn't work, oh, I missed that this in this round. Once you've exhausted that, then it will shine a light on some things you did not know. And so you have to invest in yourself again for those areas. For me, I invested and I'm still working towards like I got a new person in a different area. So once I revisited that and I got solid on that, then it was like, oh, but this is really why you're in this summer slide or seasonal slide because you're missing this particular skill set. I don't care how many years of experience you have at something, how many degrees you have or titles, you still there's still skill sets you have to up level. We talk about being lifelong learners, but that means lifelong learners who also invest in themselves. I could have figured it out and watched YouTube videos. I didn't have time for that. This is why you invest in yourself. So I was like, okay, what's the quickest way for me to learn this skill? So I had to invest in find something, and I sat there and I studied it. I put myself in summer school. So part of the summer slide that I had to get out of was, okay, come on, get it together. And then I had to go to summer school. That's part of the people who don't dip. They are constantly in some kind of incubator or training to keep the momentum going. So that's what I had to do. And then that part of me investing myself, it helped me to be honest and about why I'm refocusing on a particular group of people. So I chose high income professionals. I would not have known to say high income professionals had I not invested in a certain skill set. Now, high income professionals have nothing to do with the actual money that you get. It may not it's the skill set of a job. So for a long time, I used to say, well, teachers don't make any money or educators don't make any money. That's not true. Who do you think all these coaches and consultants are? What do you think Tony Robbins is? Tony Robbins is an educator. I know people say he's a businessman and all of that, but he's an educator and a consultant, like someone who educates, He's a professor. I'm professing what I do, and because of what my understanding and my experience as a professor is, a lot of these top coaches, even business people, are in a way like professors, and that's a whole nother thing I get into later. Why I see it that way when I understood it that way, I was like, oh, my skill set as a true educator, that is worth billions of dollars, right? And same thing like for you, there are certain skill sets that are worth hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars, even in your profession. And so I'm not saying one example I learned, like if you're a dentist, yes, that's a high income career, you know, but you really can't take the actual skill set of being a dentist and to transfer someone to somewhere else. Like it's a dentist. There's some technical things you probably could, but that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm like people who are managers, CEOs, facilitators, things like that, people really with high advanced level of degrees, there are certain skills that you've learned that if you paid attention to them, they can generate high income for you. So that's why I said high income professionals. I used to be like, oh, I didn't want to say that, or people going to think that I'm only after money, or I'm, just using this term. But I was like, forget that, it goes to my dream. And when I redreamed and the end goal of what that dream meant, I needed some people who were going to be at a certain level to be open to it, who had the capacity to deal with it, and who I know that they already wanted to contribute in life. They just didn't know how. They wanted more impact. They just didn't know how. All right. So revisit. And then the third lesson that I learned under Redream was I had to rediscover. So we talked about refocus, revisit, and now we're on to rediscover. What did I have to rediscover? I had to rediscover my own strengths and my calling and assignment. Now, there's a difference between purpose. I don't, at first I was like, did I have to rediscover my purpose? No, I already knew what my purpose was, right? But I believe that so many people are so caught up on purpose that they forget that they have assignments and callings, and those can change. So my purpose And like I'm just giving you the messaging versions to bankrupt a billion bearer applause, helping people live a life poured out, getting a return on investment of their expertise and experiences, create their own ecosystem and build their own economy, you know, through their skill set and sharing, being thought leaders and dreaming bigger and executing to grow other people's lives. So use all of your gifts and talents while you're above ground before you go underground. All right. And I've been doing it as an educator for years, just didn't know that. But my calling at one point, it was to be a K-12 teacher. At another point, it was to be a college professor. And looking back, there were things, those were well, let me go to assignment. Those are my assignments, right? To do that. Now your calling can change. Right now, the calling is to like coach, give advice, and consult, right? It could, or now if I still want to bankrupt the burial plots and help people live a life poured out, I could probably do that through real estate. I could probably do that during e-commerce or fintech or um, having car washes, having a franchise. There are different ways to do that, but right now that's not my calling, right? So it's just through this. And I can break that down later if you need me to. Comment down below if you want me to do that. So I had to rediscover that. I was like, wait a minute, you are strong in these areas. There's a reason why you went all the way up to your PhD in this particular area. What were those things you learned? What are you great at? Not good at. What are you great at? What are you phenomenal at? And I had to rediscover that. And then I had to look at my assignment. And for such a time as this, I know it sounds cliche, but it's so true. Why right here at this moment? And God already told me, He probably already told you. Now you have to rediscover after you redream and then you refocus and then you revisit some things and then you learn some more things. Now it's like you rediscover and get back on that path to help you get out of that funk. Once you realize I have everything I need for this particular moment, there are some things you still probably need to learn and grow. But if you have a goal, and I have this number, this financial number, because in business you need financial numbers, then I have this impact number of people, if that is coming up to you over and over, it's so bad. Well, it's so good that I've listened to certain other cyber coaches and digital coaches and things like that, mentors, there are people who I've invested with and people who I have not, but maybe more so people who I've invested with. I listened to their videos, and one of them literally said part of a number that I wanted to generate. And I'm like, really, God? God has such a sense of humor. And I believe when you get that number, whether it's revenue or people, He's giving you everything you need to do that right now, not 10 years from now. We'll just say to the end of the season. Right now, it's 2024. So the end of this year, we got what, 5 months left. And whatever your season is, I'll say just set up a right there in that moment, not 10 years from now, not 5 years from now. Right now, He's giving you everything you need. And the reason why I say right now is because you had it 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Whenever you made the initial shift, some people like to say pivot, but when you made it to this next, whatever level that was, and you haven't quite gotten to the next one, that means the love. Let me break it. The goal that I have now that I had to revisit or redream about. I had that goal 3 years ago. Like the revenue goal and the impact goal, the number of people, I had it 3 years ago. So what I'm saying to you is that when it was scary then when you had it, that is what you were supposed to, or that is what I needed to constantly focus on and go and move towards until I hit it, right? Same thing for you. So before I go to the next level, then it's like, no, that's the thing I need to hit. And I have everything I need. And I even have more now. But the moment that God gave me that, I had everything I needed to hit that, right? So for you, I know I don't get so hung up on like the actual like numbers, but you need a target. Now go big, because that way if you go big and you fall, it's not so bad. You're like, oh well, that's still amazing too. And so rediscover that. And what else I want to say? Oh yeah. So when you rediscover that, then now you can start pulling yourself out of the summer slide or seasonal slide, because now you have um, action steps that you can take. You can have input, things that you can do every single day that align to that. You'll start getting fired up. You'll start getting more clear. You'll start saying no to everything else, because now you're laser focused on that when you rediscover what you were doing. All right. So then while you're in the midst of that, I'm not saying that, oh, now everything is good. No, you might have to do this a few times, because then this is going to show you where you were strong at, but then it's going to highlight some areas where you still need to grow. And that's where I'm talking about the different levels. I don't want to say weaknesses, but I'm going to say that whatever the dream is that you haven't the dream hasn't been realized yet, because there's still some building that you as a person need to do. Me as a person, that I need to do some muscles that are weak that I need to strengthen. And those, it's not going to always feel good, right? So you're going to have to push through, and I have something called push. That information will be down below later, but you have to push through the soreness, just like if you're working out in real life. You push through the soreness. You're going to have to push through some sickness, some sorrow, some silence on certain things, and even some success, because you may be comfortable and you're like, oh yeah, I did it. But if it's not the actual dream, then you didn't do anything. You just took another step. So you still have to push through even that success, right? So when you push through the soreness, the silence, the success, the sorrow, the sickness, the shame, you push through all of that. That is building your muscle to help you with that dream. A lot of times we experience any of those things and stop, and then we wonder why we haven't gotten over to the next level, because your dream doesn't get realized until like you're gone. I know that sounds morbid, but I don't want to say that, because there are a lot of people. This is why I started this movement. I'll say this, you don't get to stop dreaming until you're gone. That's a better way, because your dreams can stop if you don't do anything. But if you're still breathing on this earth, that means there are things you still need to work on to have that dream, because you want to be able to have that dream continue to run even past you, even if you're still alive. Let's say you make it to 199, right? Okay, let me be realistic. Let's say if you make it to 100, 100, you want to still be able to see what the fruits of your labor are, to still be able to move forward. So this is why this is more than just, let me just make some money, or let me just have like a small little business. Now, if that's what you want to do, that's great. But I'm talking about, that the thing inside of you that is so massive, and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. The pressure can be taken off. It's like you're building the foundation to pass the torch to someone else. The Olympics time now, pass the torch. You want to have a legacy. I'm pretty sure when the Olympics started, they didn't know it was going to be this whole big thing. But whoever started, uh, once they were too old to compete, then they could still see that legacy go. So you want to have those types of dreams, and you want to redream at that level. All right. So that's all I have for you on part one of how to overcome the summer slide in your life, business, or career, or you can insert seasonal slide. And we talked about the first part of was to redream. And under redream, we said you had to refocus, you had to revisit, and then you had to rediscover. All right. So thank you so much for listening and learning with me. I suggest that you go to, or I invite you to go to Dr. Vernita Glenn-White.com/Master Coach You. It'll be down in the description. It's a complimentary resource of different types of areas, about 4 zones, and that where you can start coaching yourself, getting yourself out of a rut, or continue the momentum. You'll get understand it there. When you're on that list and you get that resource and start taking a deep dive in some of the work I've compiled for you, you're going to be invited to uh, my upcoming event. I'm not going to say too much about it yet, because whenever you're watching this, it may not be the exact same event, but you will see it down below. But I want you to have a foundation And that's why I suggest that you start at Master Coach U. And then at the event, you'll get some more details about it. The links may be underneath each other, but at least start at Master Coach U. And whatever event link is there, I do invite you to register and join both of those so we can stay connected. All right. So I will see you on the other side and stay brilliant.